This is Punk Rock and Politics, and today is June 26th, 2018, and this is episode number 69. Let's do this.
These days are strange, it's true.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
If you think that punk rock doesn't mix with politics, you're wrong.
Welcome to Punk Rock and Politics, and today we'll be talking with fellow podcast hosts Austin and Tom from the Dumb All Over podcast about the 2018 midterms, our predictions on them, and we'll get to check out some of Austin Cologne's music. And of course, we'll address the US's fascination with celebrity presidential candidates.
Crazy billionaire, well, quote-unquote billionaire, won for the Republicans. Let's get a crazy Democrat! And they're like, okay, now where's our options? Mark Cuban. They're probably going to try to find a way to get Elon Musk to become an American quickly.
Elon Musk, the guy thinks that Karl Marx was a capitalist. that Elon Musk?
All that and more on today's episode. So let's get to the political mosh pit. First, here's the news of the week.
Here's what's making news.
The United States pulls out of the UN Human Rights Council. Here's the ambassador to the UN from the United States, Nikki Haley.
For too long, the Human Rights Council has been a protector of human rights abusers and a cesspool of political bias. Regrettably, it is now clear that our call for reform was not heeded. Human rights abusers continue to serve on and be elected to the Council. The world's most inhumane regimes continue to escape scrutiny. And the Council continues politicizing and scapegoating of countries with positive human rights records in an attempt to distract from the abusers in their ranks. Therefore, as we said we would do a year ago, if we did not see any progress, the United States is officially withdrawing from the UN Human Rights Council. In doing so, I want to make it crystal clear that this step is not a retreat from human rights commitments. On the contrary, we take this step because our commitment does not allow us to remain a part of a hypocritical and self-serving organization that makes a mockery of human rights.
President Trump signed an executive order to stop the separation of migrant children from their families at the border, but he tried to take credit for fixing a problem his attorney general caused. Here's President Trump.
But we have to have strong borders, and ultimately we want to see it done right, and it will be done right. But what we have done today is we are keeping families together. The borders are just as tough, just as strong.
So instead of being separated at the border, the families will be kept together in a prison when they try to cross the border. I don't really see much improvement in that. On a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court upheld Trump's travel ban on travel from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. And in New York's primary, a 28-year-old Democratic Socialist beat a 10-term Democratic Congressman, Joe Crowley. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez running in her first campaign ever, and she won. Crowley was a prominent figure in the Democratic Party and 4th in line for the Speaker of the House. And he also outraised Cortez 10-1 in their primary run and still lost. This is an epic blow to the Democratic Party establishment and will show real progressives can and will win. And here's a clip from Alexandria's victory speech.
Because the message that we sent the world tonight is that it's not okay to put donors before your community. Sometimes the deep midnight and darkness that it feels in our political environment, that there is still hope for this nation. That is what you have given every person in this country. You have given this country hope. You have given this country proof that when you knock on your neighbor's door, when you come to them with love, when you let them know that no matter your stance, you are there for them, that we can make change.
Yeah!
And on this day in rock history, June 26, 1969, the bassist from Radiohead, Colin Greenwood, was born. So, happy birthday, Colin. And that's the news of the week. What is up, my fellow political junkies? And one of my favorite parts about hosting the Punk Rock and Politics podcast is that I get to talk with so many other talented people. And on today's episode, there is no exception. I first heard about the Dumb All Over podcast about a year ago on Twitter, and I really enjoyed their mix of social commentary with thought-provoking conversations about political issues, and of course, they also talk about craft beer, which is an awesome little unique part of their podcast. So not only is Tom and Austin the host of the Dumb All Over podcast, but Austin is actually a musician, and he even went to the Berklee School of Music to study music and music theory. And Austin Colon just released his solo album, so I thought it would be really awesome if we can have the host from the Dumb All Over podcast on for a chat, and we can even jam out to Austin's music. And of course, we even got to talk about some craft beer, but before we get to the interview, let's check out one of Austin's songs. Here's Silence is Dangerous by Austin Colon.
A young black body lies on the ground, a crimson halo round his head. His mother's screams echo in the night, distilled through all the tears they shed. An alabaster face thrust upon your screen, saying no, there's nothing wrong. A heartless voice in her soulless choir, singing loud their hateful song. Let's stand against fear and make our voices heard. Love conquers hate. A bright young girl in her backward home struggles to get through the day. Condemned outright by her parents' hate because she doesn't live their way. They sent her off to her torture camp, who said her love was just a choice. She suffered their abuse and ignorance until she had to quiet the noise. Let's stand against fear and make our voices heard. Love conquers hate. So let's take them all down one by one, just to undo the damage they've done. And we'll do it again. Now we won't let them do this to us. And we'll burn it all down if we must. 'Cause in this moment we know silence is dangerous. The silence is dangerous. The silence is dangerous.
And that was Silence is Dangerous by Austin Colon. And I actually have Austin and Tom from the Dumb All Over podcast here joining us on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast. What is up, Austin and Tom?
What's up?
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm really excited for this episode and to be talking to you guys because this is a special treat because I was planning on having you two on the show no matter what on this podcast, but I was pleasantly surprised to find out that one of you guys are actually a musician, and that song that we just heard is actually a solo project from Austin, which is awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So, but before we get into that, we're going to talk about that a little bit because I definitely have more to say about the music. But before we get going, can you two introduce yourselves so the listeners can associate a name with a voice?
Sure. I'm Tom. I'm the untalented one from from Dumb All Over. That's my annoying voice that you hear now. Hello.
And I'm Austin, and I am the other co-host of Dumb All Over. And I do all the audio stuff, so that's kind of how, and everything else, and write the music and all that stuff. But Tom does stuff too.
I see how it works. Well, before we were talking a little bit before we were recording in the pre-show. I was telling Tom he has that like game show kind of host going on, you know, the cool Ryan Seacrest thing, you know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So see, there you go, Tom. You are the talented one. You have the character, and then Austin's obviously the brains behind the operation, I guess, right?
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely.
That's accurate,
I will take it. It's okay.
Yeah, and with you two combined, you are Dumb All Over the podcast. And yeah, I stumbled upon your podcast, geez, it had to have been well over a year ago. And, you know, we've been following each other on Twitter. I've been listening to your podcast as often as I can, and I completely enjoy it because you guys have a plethora of different guests on, and then when you don't have guests, you guys are always getting into the weeds. You get super wonky, really down and dirty into issues. But before we kind of get on to everything else, one of my favorite things that you guys do on your podcast, you're also big into craft beer. So we're adapting a thing that you guys do pretty much in most of your episodes. You guys talk about what beers you're drinking. So I cracked mine and I'm good. So what are you guys drinking today?
Go ahead, Austin. You go ahead and start us off.
Okay. So today I am drinking Dirty Little Freak from a brewery named Duclaw. It is a chocolate coconut ale, and it's one of our favorites. Tom and I have had this quite a few times.
Several times.
And so I just pulled out one of the greatest hits for the show.
There you go.
Greatest, I like that.
And then I am drinking a little bit more of a more popular name. It's from Dogfish Head. It's their wood-aged birch or bitches brew. You know, I tried to not say the word, but
where
it
did
actually
you get
is
the bitches brew?
I got the bitches brew.
Oh. Hold on, as a side note, Tom, did you get that at Wegmans?
I did get this at Wegmans.
Oh, fuck you. I want that beer so bad.
You got the last one. You're screwed, man.
It's really good.
I know.
It's 9% ABV, so it's it's pretty strong.
Oh yeah.
And I've enjoyed an entire 6-pack, in the last couple of days. So it's been it's a pretty good one. So I'm looking forward to drinking this one as we do this.
Oh, nice. And you guys are from Pennsylvania, so that's a little caveat. And I'm drinking Prankster. It's spelled with a Q, but it's North Coast, and it's actually brewed out here in Fort Bragg, California. And unfortunately, it only comes in 4-packs, which is a bummer. But yeah. I'll take what I can get. Huh?
There's a lot of good beers that only come in 4-pack.
Yeah, I know. It's because it's like they know that it's high quality, so they only do the 4-pack. But recently, actually, I was out in Philadelphia, and I drove all the way through the state of Pennsylvania, and I stopped at Appalachian Beer Brewing Company. Are you guys familiar with that? Yeah. That's a really good
I've never
company.
had it. I've never actually had it.
It's all right. I mean, it's nothing super special, but it's good. It's good, you know. I thought it was pretty one of the bigger names out there. And then another one was Yards Brewery out there.
Yards is famous.
That one's huge around here.
Yeah.
Now, listen, Pennsylvania is not good at a lot of things. Believe me, it's not good at a lot of things. But one thing they do get right is their craft beer. We have some pretty good craft beer around here, but that's where it ends.
It makes
really
up, makes up for all the civil rights stuff.
Yeah.
No, maybe not. It helps get that, passed. That's about it.
Yeah. I think it was on your last episode or one of them you said something about where the animals spell better than the people in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's something
that's great. That's hilarious.
It's something that I adapted early on when we started the show. Just a little dig at Pennsylvania. And I promised a long time ago I will stop attacking Pennsylvania when Pennsylvania is so shitty to live in. It's a simple agreement. That's all.
Yeah, and a little bit more about Pennsylvania since we're on this topic. It blew my mind because I'm out here, San Diego. I'm basically born and raised West Coast, and I've lived all up and down the West Coast. And recently, I've been out in the East Coast a lot more, which I think the East Coast is really beautiful. But it was crazy. I could not believe it costs about $38 to drive from one side of Pennsylvania all the way to the other on the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, because I've driven, from San Diego to Seattle, and I didn't have to pay a penny when it came to tolls. So I was like, geez, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's you think it's bad enough living here, and then they're like, well, now you got to pay to drive through it. Like, stay where you are in your tiny little shitty section of Pennsylvania. Don't go try to find new places. Then you're gonna have to get charged. And what's even worse is you have to pay $1 to leave Pennsylvania to go into New Jersey. Like, what the fuck? And then you have to pay $1 to get back in. It's like, wait a second, I'm not paying to come into this state, but apparently we do.
But the toll roads in Jersey, they were like pennies compared to Pennsylvania. It's really interesting, for me being a West Coast kid and then going over there in each state. Some states the tolls are crazy and some tolls they're not, but I mean they all have tolls, but it's interesting. I mean, what really decides the tolls? And then you have to think you have to pay the people working the tolls. So how much money can that really generate for the state? But that's a whole nother podcast, I suppose, huh?
It probably is. It probably is. That's a good question though. Tom Wolf, who's I know is listening to this. He's our governor. I know he's listening. He listens to everything that we do.
Yeah.
Maybe he does. He might not. Maybe he doesn't. Okay.
You guys insult him so much. I'm sure he has to check it out, right?
He's okay.
So we're kind of going over. We're kind of going over like the beer thing and everything, but before I talk about Austin's music, give everyone kind of a quick recap or let everyone know what is your podcast? What do you guys focus on other than talking about Awesome Craft Brew? What else do you guys talk about?
Well, it's pretty much anything and everything political. No one is safe in our show. We will go after Democrats, we'll go after Republicans, we'll go after independents. We definitely go after libertarians because fuck libertarians. And we just try to cover the main news stories every week, and then a couple ones that you might have missed because of the distraction that the mainstream media is doing. Yeah. And sometimes it's the smaller stories that actually hurt the worst. Yeah. Because with all the crap that's going on with Trump and the legal issues with Trump, it's very hard. It's very easy to miss the fact that Senate and Congress in general is still passing. They're still passing laws as we speak. We just might not hear about them because we're focused on who's going to get arrested or indicted next. So it's kind of like we kind of took that responsibility to try to cover as much as we can. And then, we'll talk about anything else from religion and some of the crazy people in religion. And once a month we have a pop culture segment where everyone realizes that I have no idea what pop culture is and get a couple laughs out of that. And then pretty much anything that we want to talk about, because by the time the show is over, we're so drunk that anything can happen.
Right. Well, and we usually pick like one policy issue to go in depth on every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a new thing that we've been doing. And I don't know, I've been enjoying it, even though it's a lot of work for me.
Yeah. I noticed one issue you guys talked about, which kind of flew under the radar, but was a big deal, was the Supreme Court ruling with Ohio, the voting they were purging people off the voting rolls, basically, and the Supreme Court who ruled that. And like you were saying, you know, it's the mainstream news. They'll focus on Trump and all these, you know, Stormy Daniels or whatever gets a lot of clicks, or the gay cake issue with the Supreme Court, but they won't talk about the Supreme Court ruling purging people off the voting rolls, which, you know, I think is a little bit more important than, you know, the gay cake issue, personally.
Yeah, well, especially because that was such a narrow ruling. Yeah. Like, that only applied to that one guy. So really, unless you're him, it really didn't matter. So yeah, the voting thing affects everybody.
Yeah,
so I can't believe that wasn't talked about.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I heard it on, like, I think I read an article on Huffington Post or something, and that was pretty much all I heard about it. And I was like, why the hell isn't CNN talking about this? But I think we know why.
Yeah. Well, with those big media outlets, and you can't necessarily blame them. You're gonna talk about what gets you views. You're not gonna talk about something that doesn't get views, because that won't keep you up. That won't keep you a functioning company. So you have to follow the things that get you the most attention. And fortunately / unfortunately for us and them, Trump gets the headlines. So those stories get precedence. Yeah. So those stories get precedence. And then meanwhile, Congress is passing laws that, you know, overturn everyday Obama laws that have been helping us for years, for example. So it's very concerning, but that's just the way that's the way that it is right now. And we're trying to change that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up Congress, because this is a huge issue, especially here in 2018. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But before we talk about the new landscape of Congress that's coming up and going to be made, all the music today we're playing is all from Austin. And when I was talking to you guys, you know, before the show and off air and everything, I was asking, you know, what's the band name? You know, is it a group? Who's in it? You know, I'm like, damn. And you guys told me it's a solo project. So all these songs are solo music from Austin. So, I mean, dude, mad respect, because that's really good for being a solo project. So tell us really quick, give me a little, you know, history on your music background.
Oh, well, I went to college for music. I went to the Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I studied composition and audio engineering. And then after I graduated, I decided I was going to work on my first album. And so it took a year and a half to get it all done. But yeah, I recorded 11 songs. Well, actually, I recorded like 30 songs, but 11 made the cut. Right. And
so this is your first album?
I did everything. Yeah, this is my first album. Okay. Yeah, and it's I did everything myself. I played all the instruments. I recorded everything. I mixed. I mastered it, and I did all the artwork.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even see the artwork, but, you know, I'm assuming it's going to be cool. So you study theory and everything, like music theory, so you're able to write it out and everything, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in school, we wrote orchestra pieces, and I have like 12 or 13 string quartet pieces lying around the house. Mm-hmm. Like, we learned how to do all that, so wow. I kind of took some of those things I learned and applied them to electronic instruments, and, you know, of course, guitar and bass and drums and vocals, and that album's what came out.
No, it's really cool. And yeah, I mean, I was in a band for ages, you know, since I was a kid, but typically in punk bands and garage bands, you know, you focus on the chords and you're kind of, oh, this sounds good. And you don't really know the fundamentals, like the rules of fifth, you know, and the chords and, you know, pretty much the scales. I mean, someone might know a few scales so they could do a kick-ass guitar solo, but later, I went to school for theory, and it was almost like learning a whole nother language. And I always was kind of like, man, if I would be able to combine this theory idea with my garage band knowledge, I could be really good. But, you know, I never got to that point. So I could hear it in your music. So that's definitely why it is such a good sound, and it does sound really good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, yeah, we're talking about it. So let's check out one more song, and then we'll get into the political mosh pit. So here's another track. Here's Alone Again by Austin Cologne.
sunlight streaking through the window pane, illuminate your suffering. The helplessness will start again. The hopelessness of who you've been comes rushing back to memory. All the things you thought you'd never be, all the times that you've been here before, leaves you waiting there for something more. And you will cry alone. It's what you've known since the day you were born. You were forlorn, and all your dreams are left unseen and left to be. Loneliness on token rage, the stupid little wars I wage. As days will do, they slip away, and I'm left with nothing more to say. And somehow I have crossed the line that I wouldn't let myself define, and I can't turn back and say I'm wrong. That's why I end up right where I belong. And I will die alone. I've always known since the day I was born, I was forewarned. Any dreams I had slipped right through my hands. Any dreams I had. It's what you've known since the day you were born. You were forlorn, and all your dreams are left unseen and left to be.
And that was Alone, again, by Austin Colón. I say it like that because it, had again in parentheses. So I felt like I needed to, I was like, how am I going to read this one? So that's what it, I had to exaggerate on the Alone part. All right. Well, let's get to the political mosh pit, guys. And I'm really looking forward to this because, like I said, you guys are definitely politically aware and very wonky. You guys know what you're talking about, and I love getting into the weeds when it comes to talking to other people about everything. So the midterms, they're only 5 months away, and
I know.
In a weird way, 5 months is a long time in this Trump era of tweets and every day a new news story. But then in another way, 5 months really isn't, because a lot of these primaries here in California, we had our primary, which was a jungle primary, which I was honestly expecting pretty much 80% of the races, because here, it's the top 2 vote getters. So it could be theoretically 2 Democrats going up against each other. So I really was thinking, we're going to have like Gavin Newsom against, the mayor from Los Angeles, Villaraigosa, which I really don't like. But we didn't even get that. We got this Republican out of nowhere, this guy Cox, who's kind of a businessman. He's actually from here in San Diego. But I was really, really disappointed with the turnout and how the Democrats voted here for the primaries. And that really set me back. So the midterms are going to be a big deal, especially like you're saying, Congress. Trump, he essentially owns the Congress. They're basically a rubber stamp for him, and they can pass anything. So this is a really big deal. And what is your guys' prediction, on the Congress and on the midterms going forward in November?
You would imagine that Austin and I would have pretty similar opinions on this, but I actually have a little bit of a different belief, and we've talked about this on the show. Well, yeah, I think the Democrats are going to win the House and the Senate. And yeah, and I know that that's the unpopular part. It's like, wow, the Democrats can't win the Senate. Look, and they might not. But the chances are actually very high that they can, especially when just last Tuesday when we had our primaries. What was that? On the spot, the 12th. Well, the 12th of June, we had our primaries, and another Republican seat was flipped into a Democratic seat, and where was it? South or North Dakota or something like that, in a place that you never would imagine a Democrat would win. Well, they won, and it's just everything. All the signs are pointing toward the Democrats being able to take over everything. And even if it has nothing to do with Trump, just look at history. When Bush wins in 2000, wins in quote unquote wins, because might not have
when
won.
The Supreme Court gave it to him.
Yeah, there we go. That's much better. The following Congress turned to be Democrats, and then when Obama won, the Democrats he had pretty much control of both, I believe, and then the Republicans took over. It just always seems to happen like that. And then you have this crazy orange bastard in Washington, and everyone is way more into it than I've seen in my life. I just think that there's going to be a big voter turnout, because I know that a lot of people always say that this is the most important election of our lives, but I really think this is the most important election of our lives.
No, I think it's true this time.
Yeah, I think it's true too. And the signs are just leaning toward the Democrats being able to take over. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean much, because we're finding out that some Democrats are just as shitty as others. Yes, I'm speaking to you, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, fucking announcing that he's going to be supporting Trump pretty much in this next election. But
and the wall.
Yeah, and the wall. Yeah.
And not the good Pink Floyd one either.
No. Yeah, exactly. All the signs are pointing to a Democratic victory. So I'm still hoping, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Republicans end up winning both, because what's there to be shocked about anymore, guys?
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I'm not so sure, Tom. I think I think the Democrats will win the House, but I think it's going to be closer than it should be. Like, really, they should wipe out the Republicans in the House. It shouldn't even, because every seat is up for election.
Right.
But I don't know. Like, the polls keep saying that Trump's approval rating is actually rising.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
can I ask you a question? Let me ask you both a question. Has anybody contacted you guys about whether or not you support the president? Have you received that phone call?
Well, no, of course
No.
not.
No,
and
no,
of course,
and
a lot
everybody
of
listening,
the sample rate is probably 1,000 voters or something, typically.
It is. It's about 1,900 usually.
Yeah.
The sample rate.
So all the listeners who are listening into this podcast right now, raise your hand if you have been called and asked if you support Donald Trump. I can't see through the internet, but I'm just imagining that not many people just raised their hand.
Okay, Tom, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But I'm just saying, like, even in a group of 1,900 people, it worries me.
Yeah.
That it goes up at all.
Not me.
But I still think the Democrats will win the House. The Senate, I'm not so sure about. It wouldn't shock me if it ended up like 50-50, split right down the middle.
Yeah, but then would be the break.
I'll consider that a victory.
Yes. So it would be, ostensibly Republican anyway.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know. Austin. Yes, that could be the case. If it's 50-50, I still consider that a victory because I think it's going to be easier to sway a couple Republicans to vote on the Democratic side. Like right now, you would have to get like at least 4 or 5 each time to guarantee that you're gonna stop something from happening or pass a Democratic legislation. I think it's going to be a lot easier to speak to the moderate conservative who still hates Trump. If you only have to convince one. So a 50-50 would be a win.
But Tom, you have to remember that now we also have to convince one extra one because Joe Manchin is basically a Trump-supporting Republican.
Yeah, but that hasn't changed. Don't forget.
Well, no, he was never this vocal before.
Yeah, he wasn't vocal, but he was still voting for Republican causes. No. He was still on Trump's side 60% of the time. So just because he's being a vocal, he's from West Virginia, and I'm sorry, listeners from West Virginia, but you're not the most convincing liberals. That's all I gotta say. You're like libertarians. Let's be honest.
Oh no, don't call them that.
Hey, we have a lot of libertarian listeners here on the podcast because, it's kind of the punk rock anarchy school of thought. So I do have a lot of libertarians. And the one thing I have a soft spot in my heart for libertarians because I respect them a lot more than Republicans. Because at least they're honest, they say no government and they're honest about that. Republicans say no government unless if you're gay, unless if you smoke pot, unless if you want prostitutes, at least, unless if you're gay, then we're going to get the government to totally destroy you. So I at least respect them for being honest, even though I don't always agree with them.
You are not wrong, but let's not forget that they thought that the guy who held his tongue just to make an example during an interview and the guy who pretended to have a stroke during a debate or a heart attack during a debate was a good candidate for president. They found the one guy who might have been crazier than Trump. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was crazier.
It's close.
What? Who's this?
It's close. Yeah.
Gary Johnson.
Oh, but see, I've talked to the libertarians from a few bands who are, they're hardcore anarchist type libertarians, and they all hated Gary Johnson. That was what they were saying. Yeah, because they were saying he isn't a true libertarian, and he gave him a bad name because he's so goofy. And I was like, yeah, that's a great point.
Well, that's the one problem I have with libertarians. That's always the answer. They're not the true libertarian. But if you ask 50 libertarians, they're all going to give you a different answer what the true one is.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't even know what that. It's such a loosely threaded together ideology that it could mean almost anything to any person. It's like an ideology through the looking glass. So. That's really why it annoys me,
because it's it sounds good on paper, but then once you start trying to see how it's going to work in this day and age and in our society where there's so many people here and government does so many different things, it is really hard to imagine how a true libertarian philosophy would work. So okay, so I am kind of more leaning with Austin here. I personally think the Dems, they're totally going to take the House. By how much, I don't know. But as far as the Senate goes, I think it's pretty much a lost cause as of right now. And I will lay out my my 3 main states, the battleground states that I have, and I'll get your guys' feedback. So with Florida, I think we know Rick Scott is running, and I think he's going to be able to take it against Bill Nelson, because every single time Rick Scott, fucking Skeletor creepy bastard that he is, he always finds a way of winning. So
that's true.
Yeah. I think he's gonna take Florida, and so that's one out. Indiana with Joe Donnelly, I don't know if he's gonna be able to hold it, because we saw in the 2016 election with the Rust Belt Republicans and how the Democrats really lost ground with the Rust Belt working class, quote unquote, white working class Republicans or Democrats. So Joe Donnelly's my second one that's going to lose it. And then third is North Dakota. I think Heidi Heitkamp is going to lose it in North Dakota, especially just with all the fracking. And gas prices.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, I know. She's just like Joe Manchin. She's basically a Republican also. And that's
she is. Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking, the old saying is, why vote for a Democrat if you could vote for, why vote for a Republican when you could vote for a real Republican? you
Right.
know? Yeah.
Well, a couple quick disclaimers as well. So like Austin just moved to New York, so he can change his political party to anybody because they have open primaries. In Pennsylvania, they still have this barbaric system called closed primaries, where you have to be either a Democrat or a Republican. So I am a Democrat by that meaning. But to be honest with you, I don't give a damn about Democrats or Republicans. I can't stress this enough. People have to look at platforms before they look at party. Party means absolutely nothing. And we found that out when we had a couple people come on our show who for interviews who were running for Congress in these progressive platforms who happen to be Republicans. And if you just looked at the word Republican, you're like, well, I'm not voting for him because he's a Republican, you could have just missed one of the more progressive minded people in the country just because they have the title of Republican. So do not look at Democrat or Republican, because Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Manchin are two perfect examples of Republicans who are Democrats.
Yeah.
I have to say too, I pretty much agree with your analysis. The only thing I would keep in mind though is with Rick Scott in Florida is that because of the hurricane in Puerto Rico, a lot of Puerto Ricans were displaced and ended up in Florida.
That's true. Yeah.
And they are not more angry at anybody than the president, who happens to be a Republican.
Yeah.
Right.
So it would shock me if that made up the difference for the Democrats down in Florida. But other than that, I agree.
Yeah, he always wins by a narrow margin. That could flip it. Wow, that's a very interesting point. I didn't even think about that.
Add to that, according to themorningconsult.com, they have a poll or an average of polls. Rick Scott as a senator candidate has only a 27% approval rating as it is right now. And if Florida is one of those states that the Democrats just swarm to the polls, he's not safe. It would make sense for him to win because he is a pretty popular figure, even though 27% shows that he actually has a pretty low approval rating. But if the Democrats flocked in Florida like they could, because Florida is one of those states that sometimes turns really blue when you really need it, then
especially in the southern parts.
Exactly. And Austin put out a good point there that I didn't even think about, that I wouldn't say his position is safe at all.
Yeah, that's going to be a really razor thin. But even if Nelson does hold on to that, it's gonna that would still put them up 52. I have it 53 is what I'm assuming that the Republicans are going to get in the Senate. But I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
Me too.
Yeah. But one other state that I just always I lived in Arizona for about 7 years, and when you say that the infrastructure or the parties don't matter, I agree with you. I really do, but to an extent, because, somewhere like Arizona, a lot of times, it's always who can run the furthest to the right in the party. And then you do need backing of a party in order to get ads and to get FaceTime on the TV or to be able to get interviews or just to get name recognition. So in Arizona, we have Christine Sinema, who she was a congresswoman believe before, which she's an amazing congresswoman. I'm very familiar with her, but we don't even know. I mean, I would not be shocked if Sheriff Joe runs and gets that seat, and I think he will win. I mean, people don't really think how far Republican, how far right Arizona is. And in the 2016 election, people were saying, oh, Hillary's going to take Arizona. I'm just like, dude, what are you guys smoking? Like, there's no way. Yeah. Arizona is so right wing, but this narrative of Arizona's turning purple. No, fuck, it's not turning purple. It's bright red. So that's something that just blows my mind. I don't know.
Well, let me clarify. I didn't necessarily mean like it doesn't matter, because it definitely does matter to the candidate to have the support of their party. I meant mostly as the idea of as a voter is to not just look at the party and say I'm voting for the Republicans down the ballot. I make sure that I look at every candidate that's running and I see what their platforms are, because you might be surprised. You might accidentally vote in a Democrat just because they're a Democrat. But they turn out to be Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
You just never know unless you look at their platform. And I feel like, especially as of late, people got into that habit where it's just like, well, I'm vote the blue wave. You know, that's what everybody's saying. Blue wave.
Yes.
Yeah, you might represent a color of the party that's blue, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're liberal. That just means they're Democrats, and Democrats are proving to us right now that they're shit. So it's very hard.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, well,
same
most
thing.
of them.
You know who else comes to mind with that as Doug Jones.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
They were so excited
but
when
you know
he
what?
won.
You know, Austin and I talked about this the day he got elected. We kind of expected this. Like, you can't be that much of a Democrat if you're going to even have a chance at winning. Yeah. And I don't know.
Especially in Alabama.
In
right?
Alabama,
he took Jeff Sessions.
Yeah,
seat,
that's what I mean in
yeah.
Alabama.
Yeah, no kidding.
He did. Yeah, he did, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
If he votes half the times with Democrats, then that's a win for us.
Yeah,
because
but
it's an
look at what Jeff Sessions is doing as Attorney General. I mean, shit, dude, I almost wish he was still in the Senate.
I know. I know.
No, yeah, it'd be much better if he were in the Senate. Yeah. He's frightening.
Yeah.
Oh God, he's horrible.
But also don't forget also the race in Texas is very interesting because there is a decent chance the polls I just looked at were almost neck and neck that Beto O'Rourke could beat Ted Cruz, who is the Zodiac killer. So yeah.
Really? Wow. I would be blown away if that happened.
Yeah.
Not to keep going back to Pennsylvania, but I'm actually concerned about the race in Pennsylvania for the seat of Bob Casey.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah, tell me about Bob Casey. Is he going to hold this seat? What's up with that?
So Bob Casey was one of the first candidates that I backed, and I actually even helped. I was young. I was like 15 or 16 when he first got elected or something like that. So I didn't actually get to vote, but I did help his campaign. No, I didn't understand politics the way I do now, but he's been good for the most part. But if Pennsylvania is not one of those states that the Democrats go to the polls a lot, he might lose because he's running against this guy named Lou Barletta. And if you're from Pennsylvania, you probably know who Lou Barletta is.
Lou Barletta.
He's
who is this? I've never heard of him.
It's fine that you haven't because he's been a state congressional candidate for the actual state of Pennsylvania for the longest time. And every year they always say, oh, Lou Barletta's, he's going to run for Senate. And he never does. And then all of a sudden he does, and he crushed his opponent. Oh. I mean, he won by over 100,000 votes. And if the Democrats do not go to the polls on November, what is it, November 5th, Bob Casey's seat could be in danger because Lou Barletta is a very popular candidate or very popular politician in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, he was kind of like Trump before Trump.
Yeah,
like
exactly
he was that kind of figure. Yeah,
but in a state level. So we've had to deal with his bullshit for I think our entire lives, Austin.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
I think he's been in
local politics.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And now he's running for Senate. And if he wins, then you have Lou Barletta and Pat Toomey as the two senators from Pennsylvania. It's a scary thought. That's when I officially moved to New York with Austin. That's when
you pack your bags and you're out.
That's when I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah. You can come with us. We have Chuck Schumer. So much better.
Oh no. I'm going to Vermont. Fuck this shit.
Vermont, right? No kidding. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I think and a lot of people are joking about, I saw on the Twitters that, some of the lefties were like, we need to move to Vermont and challenge Bernie Sanders as an actual Democrat. I'm like, what the? Are you like, is this a joke? Or are you trolling us? What's going on? Did you see any of those people on Twitter?
Yeah, it's silly. It's a silly motion. It's a silly thought. I mean, Bernie Sanders is the most popular candidate in the country, or most popular politician in the country, according to the average of polls. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, listen, I'm going to Vermont, not necessarily just for Bernie, and not just because weed is legalized there, but
no, it's because Tom really likes ice cream.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, Ben and Jerry's. Yeah. That's the reason. Yeah. Yep, that's it. Except I don't eat dairy, so I'm not sure how this is going to work.
Well, they have dairy free.
They have.
Okay, I'm sold. Vermont, here I come.
Yeah. Well, and then speaking of, the infighting, between Democrats and everything, how there's kind of like a civil war going on. Recently, like Peter Dow, he's just gone like someone must have replaced him with a robot or something. I don't know what's going on because I believe you guys retweeted some of his tweets, and he's actually kind of doing a full 180. And I don't know. I'm really skeptical, but in a way, I think this is good if the two sides, you know, the more corporate wing that I don't always agree with on the, you know, the left, and then the far left, you know, which I'm more a part of, the socialist, you know, democratic socialist wing. If we can kind of put aside our differences and focus on, you know, what differences we have are such small, insignificant compared to against the Republicans and what they're doing. It's really important for us to unite rather than keep this civil war going on.
100% agreed.
Yeah.
I can't agree anymore. And that's one of the things that Austin and I talk about all the time, especially, and it does come from both the Bernie wing and the Hillary wing. Like they just can't let it go.
There's certain people.
Some of them just can't let it go. Like Hillary lost. All right. So we move on. Bernie lost. So we move on. And some people can't move on. And it's a scary thought. Especially when you have such a pop like Bernie Sanders, if he decides to run as an independent, he's going to take so many votes from the Democratic side. Because I remember they tried to pass a law, or they did pass a law, the Democrats, saying that like you have to you have to be in the Democratic Party. I think Bernie is actually safe, right? And I don't even think that relates to Bernie, because I'm pretty sure Bernie did, like, he followed to be a Democrat like a year before or something like that.
Well, it's a very specific. The rules are very specific, and it was kind of misreported that they're saying that in order to run in the Democratic Party, you have to declare a Democrat or have been an elected official that has proven Democratic ideals, which Bernie's done.
Okay, yeah.
So basically, the Democrat 90-something% of the time. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So basically, it's just keeping out people like Mark Zuckerberg if he didn't want to declare himself a Democrat, or kind of outside influences.
Mark Cuban. Oh God, I hate Mark Cuban so much.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the left, they're like, exactly. Oh, we want to run Cuban. And I'm like, no, he would be just as bad as Trump, man. That guy's nuts.
They just,
he is.
People just have these like responses. Remember Oprah? Oprah was a whole...
Yeah, oh yeah.
Where Democrats are like, oh, Trump has no experience. He can't run for president. And then they're like, let's get Oprah. Oprah's available. What the fuck are you talking about?
She gave a great speech. She gave one great speech, and they're like, oh, we got to do GoPro.
So did Leonardo DiCaprio.
Well, actually, DiCaprio actually knows a lot about the issues when it comes to global climate change and green energy and everything. I mean, as far as experience goes, I think DiCaprio is miles ahead of Oprah.
Probably, but I still wouldn't want DiCaprio to run for president.
No.
That's not the response. And people just they rush to these ideas. They're like, well, a crazy billionaire, well, quote unquote billionaire, won for the Republicans. Let's get a crazy Democrat. And they're like, okay, now where's our options? Mark Cuban. They're probably gonna try to find a way to get Elon Musk to become an American quickly.
Elon Musk, the guy that thinks that Karl Marx was a capitalist. that Elon Musk.
Do you read it? Yeah. Exactly. He's talking about how horrible socialists are, and then someone asks him in his tweet, what are you? I'm a socialist. It's like, dude, you just talk shit about socialists. Now you're saying you're like, what? Like, I love Teslas, don't get me wrong. If I could buy a Tesla, I would. But Elon Musk is nuts, dude. And SpaceX is awesome. But I don't think he belongs in government. So this is really cool. Before we wrap it up and everything, I want to riff on this a little bit more. So we kind of went over people who we don't want to see run against Trump in 2020. So let's assume, the Democrats, even whether they win it or they don't, but impeaching Trump is going to be nearly impossible. I don't even know if that's going to be possible. So
I don't know if I want it.
Yeah, I don't even know. And even if it does, it's going to divide the country so much. So I think the best hope we have is to run a really strong ticket in 2020. So wrapping it up here, what do you guys think would be the strongest ticket for 2020? Is there anyone on the scene right now that you even see who would be good?
Okay, I'll let you go, Austin.
Well, of course. I mean, I'd love it if Bernie ran again. I'd vote for him in a heartbeat. I'd love it if Elizabeth Warren would run.
Yes.
And if they'd run together, that would be the dream ticket for me. But I don't know if there's anybody else. It was funny because up to last week or like a week and a half ago, I would have said Ro Khanna would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he got involved in a local New York congressional race that completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
And he backed the corporate Democrat, and I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And but he still probably would make a decent president. So any of those three, but there's not a whole lot, to be honest.
That's what's terrifying.
I can provide like this. All right. So let's say that Bernie is not an option. He announces, I'm not going to run. Okay. That now the Democrats need somebody who's going to go up against him. And I know I'm going to get shit for this, and I apologize in advance. I'm not saying that he's my favorite candidate, but if you want somebody who's going to go punch for punch with Donald Trump, a guy like Joe Biden is going to be a good candidate. I know. Believe me, I know it's not my number one choice. I want Bernie Sanders to run for president again because I want to support him again in a fair opportunity. But if it doesn't happen like that, Elizabeth Warren, I don't know if she can do it by herself. I just don't know. I don't know where this country stands. Trump already has a nickname for her, Pocahontas. Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's tough. Any candidate that I can think of, Cory Booker, is not going to be a good candidate. No one is going to vote for Cory fucking Booker.
No.
Okay.
No. But what about Keith Ellison?
Yeah. You broke my heart, Ellison. Listen, Keith Ellison would be great, but But do you really think that this country right now in its current state, aside from Democrats, are going to vote for a black Muslim? I just don't see it.
The Republicans think we already did, so I don't see what the big deal is.
I guess that's a good point. I don't know.
Who was born in
I
Kenya?
would love. Yeah,
exactly.
And he's our one Kenya. We have one listener from Kenya, so we always thank Obama for listening in.
Oh.
And
That's good.
And so I would love if Keith Ellison would run, but it's gonna be it's oh god, as long as it's not Hillary, because I just don't want to see that again. But Biden would be a good choice.
Hillary will run again. I really don't think so. No. And then as far as Joe Biden, I mean, I'm like, dude, Joe, you had your chance in 2016, but you stepped aside to give it to Hillary. That's what happened. He had marching orders from higher up. I mean, for God's sakes, dude, Beau Biden, his son, on his deathbed, told his dad he needs to run because he can't let Hillary run. Like, his son told them that on his deathbed, and he still said, no, I have to step aside because, we're giving it to Hillary. That's what it is. And as far as, the bitter Bernie voters, I do agree. I used to be in that camp. I'm warming back up to the centrist Dems, but we need to get rid of the superdelegates, number one. That's definitely hands down. We have to do that. And I think once we get rid of the superdelegates, a lot of the Bernie wing has no right to be still bitter. But, I love Bernie. I love Elizabeth Warren. But I think, that's two on the same wing. Here, I think, you guys didn't mention Tulsi, like Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
and then, but we're only naming people on the progressive wing. So I personally think we need a ticket that is, a more centrist type Democrat, and then we have a progressive Democrat, So one person I've been throwing out there for ages, and I think she's flying under the radar, is Gillibrand.
Okay.
And that's up in New York. That's your senator up there, Austin.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I don't dislike her, although it annoys me that she got involved also in the governor's race here in New York and the race in that
pissed me off too. Yeah,
and it's like that whole thing where all 2016 they're like, there's a special place in hell for women that don't support other women.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to these primaries, are like, or not, whatever. We'll just back the old white guy. So that bugged me.
And not just that,
I wouldn't be against that.
Nixon, she's lesbian. She's not, so it's like, okay, that's really like, when it comes to identity politics, dude, Cynthia Nixon is like number one. I mean, it's so, I don't understand why they threw everyone in there, threw it all against Cuomo. And I think now she has to do a signature campaign in order just to get on the ballot, correct?
Yeah, she does. Yep. Yeah, and she's doing that right now.
Yeah, I hope she gets that.
Yeah,
she'll get it. Yeah.
That would be nice. That would be actually really good if she did. And to add to that, I wouldn't mind if Gillibrand was a candidate. I just want to make sure that we get someone who is electable and who can beat Trump. And to be completely honest, I know this is going against everything that we've been talking about all day and all year, but at this point, I'll take anyone else on the Democratic side except Joe Manchin to win against Donald Trump. Honestly, if it means going back to a true center Democrat, but it'd be better than Donald Trump, so I'm all for it. And that's where. Yeah,
but the thing is, though, that's what we've tried. That's what it's been.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
It's like for one time, try the progressive.
I know,
way, and maybe we'll actually win.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Also,
everything's all fucked up,
one of my main arguments is that I've been having, for a while, and I talked to Ron Placone not too long ago, from the Young Turks, and he does his own podcast and stuff. But, he was kind of saying, and I really echo his sentiment, is that, the centrist Dems is what gave us Trump. Also, with a lot of people, Obama, he was talking hope and change, and he wanted to, people really expected a lot from him, and then he didn't prosecute the banks. He gave us the ACA, and which is way better than what it was, but it's not single payer.
Right.
He kind of was he kind of let a lot of people down, and then I think, and he didn't change anything. It was just more of the same, and I think that's where Trump came about, and that's how we got Trump. So I think if we go with another centrist, I think we might end up with Trump 2.0, and the next Trump, it might actually be not just an idiot, but actually, a potential fascist and be competent, which is
I do
really
agree.
scary.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I definitely agree. Like I said, it's a weird situation. It's playing with my emotions because I want a progressive to win more than anything. But every single day that passes, I'm just like, get this fucking baboon out of office. That's it.
Yeah.
And it hurts to say that, but it's going to be an interesting November. That's for sure. Let's start with November. Let's make sure that every one of your listeners, make sure they go out. Everybody who's listening, go out and vote. Check each candidate and make sure that we put the best people in that we can, so we can at least fight what we have. And that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and we need to at least, I like it when our government is at least balanced. And if we can get, like we were even saying, the 50-50 in the Senate, and then if the Dems could win the House, then maybe we can have some halfway decent things go through, like an infrastructure bill, and we can actually rebuild America, because Trump will cave on shit. And if the Democrats can pass a comprehensive immigration plan that covers DACA, it's a stripped down version of the wall. I mean, Trump will sign it. He'll fucking sign anything, and he'll pretend like it was his idea. So, it's not the end of the world.
Well, hold on there. Don't forget, the Democrats are the ones tearing apart these families, though. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure, guys. You saw that tweet from Trump, right?
And that's complete.
That's unbelievable.
That's been picked apart by so many news agencies and so many people that, I mean, Trump, they could end it. And he was saying how he needs 60% vote. Bullshit, dude, because the Democrats aren't going to filibuster you if you're going to fix that, if the Republicans are going to fix that. So his whole thing that it's the Democrats' fault, no, because they, it was Jeff Sessions, again, it was him who implemented the zero tolerance policy in the first place.
Yeah.
Fucking idiots.
Exactly. It's so fucked up.
But how many people believe him? And that's why his poll numbers are rising, like Austin was saying. So
yeah.
That's the problem.
Which is such a concern. That's a very concerning thing, but we'll see if those polls actually hold any weight, because like I said, I don't trust those kind of polls nearly as much as a lot of people do. For one fact that I learned that most of them are through landlines, and I don't know if you've checked all your friends recently, but who the fuck has a landline anymore? Unless you're 80 or above, you don't have a landline. And those 80 and above people are voting for Republicans. So I don't know if I believe it or not. Yeah. We'll see in November.
My grandma Nana, she has a landline with a rotary telephone. She does. With a rotary telephone, the ones that spin.
Probably dial. No, that's great.
No, I'm not even joking. 100%. 100%.
My grandmother has one too.
Yeah, that's funny. It's probably from the 50s. That does go to say, that's some really well-built machinery right there if that thing's still around for 60 plus years. You know?
That's true.
All right, we'll give them that.
Yeah.
We'll give them that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
they also were the ones who said black people couldn't vote. So, okay.
Oh,
So I think
that's true too. Oh man. Well, hey guys, it was a blast having you guys come on here, and I really enjoyed. It's good to talk about issues, but every now and then it's fun to do some predictions and get out there. And I liked your insight, on Bob Casey and everything. So before I let you go, let everyone know where's the best place to find Dumb All Over podcast, and then Austin, let everyone know where can people find your solo project.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us on. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. It's always great talking to, and I'm a huge punk rock fan, so I love listening to the show. It introduced me to a lot of good bands too. Good. Thank you for that. For us, we're pretty much anywhere that you can find us. We're always using the name Dumb All Over Pod. You can download our show on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Everything is at or whatever, Dumb All Over Pod. So do a search for us, and if you like what you heard here, and you probably won't like our show because it's interesting, but give us a chance anyway. Why not? Yeah. So we're pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, and you can find all my music on it's on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all of the streaming platforms. Just search my name, Austin Cologne, and you'll find it. I'm also on Bandcamp. Under Austin Cologne, you'll find that too. And then on Twitter, I'm at Austin Cologne Band. So that's where you can find all that stuff.
Cologne, Colon.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So when you're searching it, so yeah, definitely, and yeah, these two, they get crazy on Twitter. So I would highly recommend, if you are on Twitter, definitely go follow Dumb All Over Pod, because they have some hilarious tweets, and you guys are very active on Twitter, which is great. And you're always talking shit about Trump and quoting his tweets, and you always have very opinionated, which I love. It's great. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thanks a lot, man.
Oh yeah. No apologies.
Yeah.
No apologies. Nope. Thank you for having us on.
Definitely. Awesome. And I have one more song. I'm totally going to butcher this title. It's Ananoresis. Did I butcher that one?
Ananoresis, yep.
Ananoresis.
That's close. Ananoresis, yeah.
Ananoresis.
Yep.
By Austin Cologne.
Time spent, moments, I got lost into the place I know, into the afterglow. I lost my head, I don't know if I want it back again, to wallow in life's laments. Now wasted my time trying to find the face of God. I found more truth in the silence, in this love. And I will
Thanks for checking out Punk Rock and Politics. If you enjoyed the show and the information brought to you, please subscribe and share the podcast. It helps us here at Punk Rock and Politics, but more importantly, it helps the featured bands gain exposure. Also, if you know any bands or musicians who would like to join the political mosh pit and have their music featured on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, please email us at punkrockandpolitics@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. And rock on, political junkies.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives.
Doing a better job of talking to each other. The left hand now knows what the right hand is doing.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it. All right.